I'm honored to have the opportunity to introduce our president, Hunt Bacher, for his presidential address. His trajectory academically is as follows. A lot of it has Western in its title. He did move up here to Chicago for Northwestern, but went to the University of Texas for college, then to UT Southwestern for medical school for a residency there. He spent a year in two Londons, one in London, England for 6 months, and then 6 months in London, Ontario in cerebral vascular fellowship. Came back to Southwestern on the faculty for 13 years, and then moved here as first the chief of the division, and then developed the Division of Neurosurgery into a department at Northwestern for 13 years, and then moved back 2012 to UT Southwestern. Hunt started as a baby, and he was a cute baby, and here's the proof of it. He then developed as a student and scholar and an athlete, and in fact, he was offered a position as a pitcher for the Baltimore Orioles, and was offered a contract at the end of his college tenure. He decided, for our good fortune, to go into medicine instead of that. Here he still has this look of promise and eagerness and engagement. This was a very important date in his life when he married Janet, who is here, his delightful and lovely wife. He served in the military, not actually in the military, he served near the military. And here he is walking through a sword arch with Janet. Here he is as a young father. He's a father of 4 daughters. If you look closely at his hooded eyes, this was when he was a young, attending with one of his babies before there were duty hours restrictions and before weed was legal. A doting father, paddle faster, girls. Those are his twins. It looks like he's about to boot them out of the kayak. Here's there's a budding family. I think this was a lake right outside of Dallas. The 4 girls are Hannah, Devon, Hunter, and Ashley, not necessarily lined up in that order, but they're behind mom and dad there. 4 daughters here. Actually, there are 3 daughters and mom, along with dad. You can pick out mom. Her hair color's a little different than the girls. His sister is a very talented violinist, the concert master of the Los Angeles Chamber Orchestra. His very important person in his life is his mentor and colleague, advocate, and friend, Duke Sampson, for whom he worked for a long time and is back together with now. He has many friends and comrades. Many of them have been leaders in our specialty. He's been the president of virtually every organization of importance in neurosurgery, the Congress. He's been the chairman of the American Board of Neurological Surgery, the president of the Society of University Neurosurgeons, the Neurosurgical Society of America, the chairman of the Residency Review Committee, the president of the Society of Neurological Surgeons, and now the president of AANS. He has testified before the ACGME with regard to duty hours before the Institute of Medicine. He's testified before the Congress with the NFL Committee on Head and Spine Injury. He's testified about getting us more graduate medical education funding. This is Robert Redford in the fictional movie, The Natural. Well, Hunt Bacher is nonfiction, the natural leader in American neurosurgery. He's a devoted father and husband. He's a devoted friend to many people, many colleagues. He's a great mentor to his students, his residents. and he's a great leader for all of us in neurosurgery, and we are really fortunate to have him as our leader. Hunt.
The people in this room can change the world. We stand together in the fight for the public well-being, both at home and abroad. We stand for something. We stand for excellence. Excellence in the care of our patients. Excellence in the way we carry off our professional duties. Excellence in how we treat colleagues from other disciplines. Excellence in how we treat each other. Excellence in how we serve our communities, and excellence in leading the way in American medicine. The American Association of Neurological Surgeons stands for something also. We stand for a unified voice for neurosurgery in the United States and as a continental society of the World Federation for all of North America. We have a complex organization now that requires leadership from many people with diverse areas of expertise. In this presentation, I'll mention a number of those people. I want to thank our executive committee that has been such a tremendous source of support during the past year. Fantastic people, and the same for our board of directors, always consensus-driven. Our senior management team, led by Tom Marshall for 15 years. Tom served with great distinction, transformed our organization financially and culturally. In November, Kathleen Craig took over and has done an exemplary job for us, and I know our best days are ahead. I want to thank our meeting planners. These guys and gal did an awesome job. Aviva is bulletproof. She has just done the scientific program like it can't be done. Reg Haid, our meeting chairman, was available 24/7, 365 to keep me out of trouble. Rich Byrne, deep knowledge of Chicago, was a great help, and you will see many aspects of his presence in the meeting. I'm honored to work with a dream team in Dallas, Texas, and this is them. It's great to serve with you every day. The two CNS presidents that I overlapped with, Nate Selden and Russ Lonzer, have been great friends for many decades, and I appreciate your service and leadership. I want to recognize my clinical mentors, Dr. Kemp Clark, AANS past president, Dr. Duke Sampson, master surgeon, Dr. Charles Drake, master surgeon and AANS past president. In addition, I have been blessed by being mentored by so many people in this room. I couldn't fit them all onto one slide, but you know who you are. And you might ask, with this many mentors, why don't I know more? I don't know. But it's been a great ride, and each of you has enriched my life, and I want you to know that. Three remarkable people from Dallas, and you see the new Parkland Hospital in the backdrop there. Scott Klemp, Suzanne Truex, and Dr. Vin Shan Ban. They have taken on with energy and creativity so many projects for the AANS that you will enjoy at this meeting and that you've seen during the past year. And the Bacher Lovelies, incredible support over so many turbulent and difficult years. Thanks for all you've done. I'm going to speak this morning about the essence of what we really are as neurosurgeons. As Dr. Quest mentioned, I have been totally blessed with so many roles in organized medicine and organized neurosurgery. Undeserved, but nevertheless, they've served as a huge training environment for me. And I've developed a real unique perspective about who we are, where we fit in the house of medicine, and most of all, what makes us totally unique. From that perspective, I'm going to consider our legacy in several ways. Innovation, our social contract, the challenges we face in honoring that social contract. What is our unique culture? And some thoughts about specific strategies that will strengthen medicine at large, with neurosurgery leading the way. Let's turn first to innovation. We all have to innovate. We have difficult diseases, we have tough operations that are long, we get in trouble, or at least I've heard some of you get in trouble, and we have to get out of it. This was not my first trouble, but the innovation here was not by me, it was by a neuroanesthesiologist, Dr. Tony Coate. Tony came around behind me and said, just let me know if you want to stop the heart. We hadn't used adenosine in that respect before, but that young man and his surgeon are deeply grateful, Tony. Good idea. We stand on the shoulders of giants in innovation. Egas Moniz, an incredible pioneer, trained in Portugal before there was formal neurosurgical training, went out and invented cerebral angiography for starters. He got interested in psychosurgery after that as his hands were becoming progressively deformed by gout. So he sent one of his young men to be trained elsewhere in Europe, who came back and joined him, and together their work with prefrontal leucotomy was awarded the Nobel Prize in 1949. These are two unsung heroes, the Rainey brothers, and as you see, Aidan initially described the selfie, and after that was instrumental in a number of technological advances in neurosurgery. They took the Cushing principle of the pneumatic tourniquet used to control scalp bleeding during craniotomy and invented these very elegant and simple scalp clips now used worldwide, and they never patented them. Louise Eisenhart, also an incredible innovator, she developed the Harvey Cushing Brain Tumor Registry. Over 2,200 human specimens with clinical vignettes, pre- and post-operative photography, and perfect neuropathological classification. They're now housed in perpetuity at Yale University for all to see. What you may not know is that she was a founding member of the Harvey Cushing Society, which of course would become the American Association. She is seated there front and center. Her roles in that organization were pretty impressive. She was the first secretary-treasurer, the first Cushing orator, the founding editor of the Journal of Neurosurgery. She held that position for over 20 years, and the first woman president of the society. You heard Aviva talk about Professor Benabid this morning, and I won't belabor that. We're honored to have him as our Richard Schneider lecturer. As a winner of the 2014 Lasker Award for founding the field of deep brain stimulation, he well may be on track for a Nobel Prize. Let's certainly hope so. Professor Benabid, would you please stand and be recognized? So who's going to be the next generation of surgeon scientists? Well, here's one. Edward Chang became the first neurosurgeon ever to win the Blavatnik National Award in the life sciences. His work involves human speech and language processing. He's from University of California, San Francisco. Dr. Chang, please rise. Certainly the most impressive person we've seen from UCSF. Neurosurgeons innovate in other ways as well. Take our boot camps. This is a way we have clearly led other specialties. They're trying to figure out how to do this. Every incoming neurosurgical resident receives their basic skills in a totally risk-free environment. Many in this room have served as faculty members and mentors and helped get this done. I think these are probably the gentlemen that did the heaviest of lifting, and our hands are off to you. We have seized the Don Quest methodology of reaching out to our students, finding the best and brightest, and pushing them into the neurosciences. We now have AANS medical student chapters in 51 institutions across the country with 1,500 new AANS members. Thank you for that, Don. Good idea. Several years ago, our RRC was approached with a very innovative and disruptive idea. This came from our programs at the National Institutes of Health and the University of Virginia. The idea was to use the strength in research of the NIH and create a pipeline of new surgeon scientists for the future. It was disruptive because it didn't fit well into the ACGME templates. And as you know, that's a little bit of a hump to get over. So Kim Burchell and I took this to Dr. Naska, Tom Naska, CEO. You'll hear from him tomorrow. And said this is a piece of innovation that needs to happen, and it's meeting some resistance, shall we say. He helped us bend standards, waive standards, and actually created a whole new accreditation designation to allow this project to go forward. In my last conversation with Kim a month ago, it is well on track. Neurosurgery innovated with our Neurosurgical Summit. Other specialties are struggling to figure out how to get this done. This is very important. It has allowed us to coalesce as one entity under the aegis of the Society of Neurological Surgeons, our senior society, research and education. This allows us to testify before Congress, before the national academies, the IOM, ACGME, as we did a month ago, as an academy, not what would be viewed as a conflicted membership society. It has been a great empowerment and totally innovative. It allows us to thread the needle between advocating for our specialty and advocating for the public interest. The good thing for our leadership is that they're basically the same. What's good for neurosurgery is good for the public, and vice versa. We've struggled in this area, subspecialty recognition. We've been subspecialists since the genesis of our field, but we've sort of held out that certificate implies a broad and deep knowledge across the neurosciences, and we all know that it's not exactly accurate. Last several years, we faced a real threat. The United Council for Neurological Specialties started generating a huge number of new trainees, some of whom were partially trained in neurocritical care and endovascular neurosurgery, and they threatened to interrupt the care that you provide for your patients throughout the continuum of their illness. How many stroke in the boxes are present in your communities now? I don't have enough fingers to reflect my community. So in response to that, neurosurgery came together, and through our Senior Society CAS Committee, we linked with the ACGME. No specialties have done this before, not for accreditation, but to add a layer of robustness to our accrediting process. We linked with the American Board of Neurological Surgery in a way that's not been done in other fields either, so that we can actually certify through the CAST non-neurosurgeons or neurosurgeons with subspecialty expertise that need that certificate in which the board cannot do it. Led the way. I really have my hats off to this group of people, particularly Art Day on the endovascular side and Bob Harbaugh on the neurocritical care side. Our social contract is a key differentiator that separates medicine from other sectors of our economy. Society has certain expectations of us, that we will be there when they need us, and we will serve them to the best of our ability, beneficence. That's our contract. In return, they treat us with honor and respect. Think of the current political discourse. Do you hear that kind of dialogue about doctors, neurosurgeons? It's not part of our social contract. They treat us as different. Think of the Social Security Act of 1965, signed into law by Lyndon Johnson. It provided funding for Medicare, but also for graduate medical education. Think about that. That's part of our social contract as well. The public good, enhanced level of care. Neurosurgery is in a unique position in our social contract, even related to other aspects of medicine, because of the critical nature of our diseases and the organs we treat. We're committed to all aspects of the patient safety and quality movements: foam in, foam out, timeouts, debrief, checklists, root cause analyses. These are good things that help us take better care of our patients and not make mistakes. We're also committed to getting better at what we're doing. Through our Quality and Outcomes database, the largest spine registry in North America, we're studying patient-reported outcomes across the spectrum of spine disease. 2 months ago, we were joined in this process. That's why the N2 dropped off of QOD. It's no longer a neurosurgical quality and outcomes database. PM&R joined us. Think of what that gives us. Patient-related outcomes across the continuum of spine care: medical intervention, physical therapy, percutaneous, open surgery. We're going to learn very quickly what works and what works for which patients and what doesn't. Radiation oncology has already joined us with stereotactic radiosurgery databases to look at the same issues, and we're in late phases of negotiation with the FDA. We're hoping that NPA becomes the preferred provider to fill a gap that they have in pre- and post-market surveillance for implantable devices. I thank these two gentlemen for their commitment over many, many years to make this happen. We have another role in our social contract that puts us at loggerheads with our role in patient safety, and that is that we serve as a court of last appeal. People come to us with horrible problems. I'm thinking of horrible spinal deformity, invasive cranial-based neoplasms, you can name the rest. Left untreated, these people are doomed to death and disability in the very early going. To treat them is costly, fraught with complications, difficulties, but we can't not do it. Neurosurgeons, not insurers and not hospital administrators, are uniquely trained to balance the risk between invasive surgical treatments and the natural history of disease. Several years ago, we encountered a perfect storm. Former professional athletes, largely football players, were being reported after death with chronic traumatic encephalopathy. Our youngsters on the playing fields, the number of reported concussions was growing dramatically, largely because of more conservative diagnostics, which is good. The CDC upward revised their estimate to 3.8 million sports-related concussions in the U.S. alone per year. Women and girls, huge reports coming in, especially in sports where men and women, boys and girls played with similar rules. The females had more injuries side by side, maybe a unique susceptibility, we don't know. And lastly, from the last two theaters, hundreds of thousands of our men and women returning from battle with manifestations of brain injury or PTSD. A number of us joined professional athletics, college athletics, communities, our school districts, to try to get our arms around this problem. In the NFL alone, with Jeff Miller's support, we were able to get the Lifestat law passed in 50 states and the District of Columbia with record pace. $100 million new dollars have been invested in brain injury research by the NFL. We've changed rules, changed policies, changed the way we manage players who are injured. There's no kick them until they wake up and put them back on the field. They are treated in a very, very patient-friendly way to make sure they fully recover before they're back on the field. As you know, that's critical in young people. The second impact syndrome just cannot happen. We've got to keep them off the field. Many of you in this room, I've seen the faces, are serving on field in the National Football League as unaffiliated neurotrauma consultants. That's 4 extra expert eyes on the field to make play safer, identify players who are injured, and manage them safely. Thank you for what you're doing. Out of the public interest in this problem, which is extraordinary, a proliferation of new things and new energy has come about that I call concussion.com. It is really amazing. Rich Ellenbogen and Mitch and those of us in the NFL committees see how many a day of new ideas. Most of them are horrible, but not all of them, believe me. And I think we're going to get major advances on the helmet we heard about yesterday. I think we're going to deal with rotational acceleration very soon. And then there's the CTE issue. Over 70% of the contemporary CTE cases have been diagnosed in a single institution. The sports media and the social media have taken this on and created hysteria in our communities. Hysteria has a price. A former NHL player, 15 years out from his career, began having some problems, assumed he had CTE because everybody else did, and everybody has it. He talked to his family, didn't want his children to see him deteriorate, and took his own life. His autopsy, done in Toronto, was negative for CTE. He needed care, not hysteria. Hysteria feeds into another actual epidemic of the 21st century, childhood obesity, type 2 diabetes. Parents are afraid, and they want to keep their kids on the couch eating chips all day, which has a really good track record, as opposed to being out, doing healthy exercise, and learning life's lessons in competitive sports. We need good science, not observational reporting. We need longitudinal studies. We need to understand the incidence and prevalence of this condition. What are the risk factors? I hope we see a day when Johnny and Susie report to football practice for the first time or lacrosse, that somebody does a buccal swab, and in a few minutes they say, Susie, go on. Johnny, the golf team is warming up down there. Neurosurgeons must lead the way in the problem of brain injury of all severities. We have some challenges in honoring our social contract. The first, and I think most important, is this. The forces of commoditization and deprofessionalism of medicine are blatant, and they're everywhere. The most recent example of this came to my practice and experience in an early morning meeting last winter when our surgical executive body was having a report from our children's hospital. A general surgeon made a report of a new software platform to improve OR efficiencies, and had all the grids were red at the beginning, and of course they were green at the end, so it was kumbayas, and it was great. During the Q&A period, we were asking various questions about how they did it, and it turns out that there was a little evil that had to be confronted. That was the little evil. That little evil is the bond between a parent and a child. That little evil had to be separated to assure wheels in on time. I don't know about you, but that concerns me deeply, and I hope that's not actually where we are. That degrades our stature, it degrades our beneficence, and if left unchecked, it will allow medicine to become just like any other widget maker in our economy with all the rights and privileges attendant to that role. Duty hours. Those of us that trained in prehistoric times know that 130 and 40 hours a week on your feet is a lot. It's hard. But the question is, does it cause injury? There's a big difference between being post-call and walking into a bustling emergency department versus walking into a dark room and reading x-rays, which is where most of our sleep physiology was performed. Aruna Ganju at Northwestern defined 3 years ago that neurosurgical trainees fatigue at a much slower rate from other specialists. Genotype, phenotype, who goes into neurosurgery? Who do we select? The death of Libby Zion in New York was a tragedy, but completely unrelated to physician fatigue or long duty shifts. Yet that case was taken through the court systems in New York, culminating in a state law being passed in 1989, capping duty hours at 80 per week. The Institute of Medicine got involved, the ACGME got involved, and in 2003, all training programs accredited by the ACGME had new duty hour standards, perhaps forever changing the way we train physicians. The world of long duty shifts was replaced with repetitive handoffs, breaks in continuity of care, loss of professionalism, and residents being put in an untenable position. They could either honor their professional responsibility and attend to a patient or family in need, and later go home and lie about their duty hours, that's a good one, or worse, avoid their professional responsibilities, make it to the elevator on time to keep their program in compliance. This is not how we work as professionals. As the first trial has just reaffirmed, 13 years into this experiment, there is no evidence whatsoever that restricting duty hours has had a single positive impact on any measurable patient outcome. None whatsoever. Another challenge, the IOM report on GME in 2014. We responded to this through our summit. Many elements of this controversial report are achieving traction on Capitol Hill. Everyone needs to know that if allowed to go forward in its entirety, it will be disastrous for academic medical centers and for specialty care and training. At the core of the problem is this. The committee recommended that we hold funding whole for at least 10 years, sort of. It's sort of because this blue area, called the Transformation Fund, does not go to GME. And there are two more badly needed government bureaucracies that are added to the oversight of GME. Thank goodness for that. Oh, they're not funded either, except out of here. Finally, a nefarious per resident rate is included, which takes residents and their funding out of academic medical centers to suburban and rural primary care sites. As a result, net-net, our major academic medical centers will lose a third of their GME funding, much of which goes for indigent care. This is a primary care-centric report that fails to acknowledge the looming shortage of surgeons like us. It fails to acknowledge that the much ballyhooed shortage of primary care doctors will be dramatically mitigated, if not completely mitigated, by mid-levels practicing to the top of license and by patient empowerment with new technologies that allow people to monitor and manage chronic illnesses at home. Electronic records. Many good things have come out of this, don't get me wrong, but also some perverse negatives. This is one. The demotion of the patient-physician intimacy. 25% of outpatient encounters across the disciplines are spent with doctors looking at machines and not patients. This is neurosurgery. We touch our patients. We bond with our patients. We nurture our patients and support them. We're not primary care. What about copy and paste? You know, we come from a world of stacks of handwritten, hand-etched notes that not even the authors can read, and certainly pharmacists couldn't read them, so medication errors occurred. So we fixed all that. And now copy and paste has replaced that with miles and miles of meaningless and redundant data. What is this patient's diagnosis? What's the plan? I'm consulted, so what am I supposed to look at on her? A whole new type of medical errors has been introduced because people can't get those answers from the electronic medical records. A final challenge that I'll mention that worries me perhaps more than any of the others is the risk of fragmentation of our field with subspecialty recommendation. Many areas have undergone this problem before, and I beg our directors of our board to remember what a slippery slope this actually is. I'm not sure what happened to my slide there. There it is. That's a slippery slope. Please only recognize those areas in which such recognition is vital, that we have to have. In my view of the life, I think it's pediatric neurosurgery, neurocritical care, and neuroendovascular surgery, period, that meet that standard. What is our unique culture? It's pretty simple. Excellence, exceptionalism. Patients in need trump self and family every time. Neurosurgery is not for everyone. Think of our patient-physician relationship in what we do. This is not dermatology. People come to see us on the worst possible day of their life. They've been found to have a brain tumor. Their child has. It doesn't get worse. That honors us. We return that honor with compassion, empathy, respect, and most of all, beneficence, a commitment to do the right thing to the best of our ability every time. Mrs. Nunn came to me on a similar day for her. She had a rapidly progressive neurological complex that related to an upper basilar giant thrombotic aneurysm, partially thrombotic. Recently retired nurse, a lot of medical background. She underwent her full diagnostic workup, provocative testing, and so forth, and came to pre-op one morning for a planned surgical Hunterian ligation of her basilar trunk. She had one good posterior communicating artery. She and her family were incredibly upbeat, and especially with medical knowledge, it's hard to justify that. And she said, thank you so much, doctor. Your team is outstanding. They were kind to us. And I get it. I'm a dead person. If this crazy idea of yours saves my life, I'll be very grateful. If it doesn't, just please don't let me linger. Think about that. The trust that's implicit in what our patients treat us with. They put everything on the line for us. When it happens, reflect on it. It'll make us better. And sometimes good things happen to good people. Our unique culture can be manifest and seen in our first two Washington leaders, Charlie Plant, Katie Rico. I got to know Charlie by pure serendipity in Dallas, Texas, as I was first becoming a faculty member at UT Southwestern. Dr. Clark was president of the AANS. Charlie was in town visiting him, and I ended up having lunch with him in the faculty club long ago, and I remember it. That's why I was so surprised by the conversation. Mr. Plant interrupted Dr. Clark and said, Kemp, you're not getting it. When Congress asked me to weigh in on a matter, they're going to get my very best researched opinion. Sometimes America's neurosurgeons are going to like it, and other times they won't. Professional integrity. That's our culture. Katie caught that from Charlie. Is it possible that initiatives taken now can influence the future? I think absolutely they can. We're perfectly positioned and would propose the following thoughts to you. We have to reverse the trend, that trend of commoditization and deprofessionalism. It must be stopped. It is our real enemy. How can we do it? First of all, Tom Naska articulated a way forward a number of years ago. I think Ralph Dacey was the chair of the committee at that time, and he looked up during our discussions, he said, you people are irritating, hard to work with, but your standards are higher, and they have to be. In our field, they must be. A culture of research. Many specialties are backing away from requiring research during training and for the training programs. We can't do that. Our residents must grow up and learn in an environment of scholarship and inquiry. That'll help them ask questions, learn to ask questions, and better, learn to answer them. A minority of our residents will be involved actively in research in their future. They need to understand the culture of it and the importance of it. And no matter where you're practicing, through our quality outcomes database, you can contribute patients to the registries. That will help you make your practice better. It'll help make our specialty better. You can contribute to NREF, and earmark it specifically for the type of research you want that to be dealt with. That will allow us to differentiate ourselves as a specialty and continue to make progress against our worst diseases. MOC. In the 90s, we failed to lead. We looked at the products coming out of the American Board of Medical Specialties and said, that's irrelevant to surgical practice. That was correct. It's going to cost a ton. That was correct. It has no value to our patients. That was correct. But we were on the wrong side of history. The winds of change had blown. Continuous certification was going to be required. Had we grabbed the moment and taken that, developed a coalition, and gone to the American Board of Medical Specialties, I don't think we would have gotten a one-size-fits-all, which always fails in medical policy. Why would we have a high-stakes cognitive exam rather than examine like we practice? We consult our colleagues, we open a book, we get on the internet. Why not examine like that? You're all aware of the ABIM, internal medicine debacle, where they generated another $40+ million of revenue off the backs of their diplomates, while the failure rate on their cognitive exam was going up to 17.5%. Their diplomates were not happy. Oh, and by the way, they spent those monies very unwisely, landing themselves in the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. That actually creates an opportunity. Our board, which did not profit from MOC, 87% of the ABMS boards did, not ours. We're perfectly positioned now. I urge my colleagues on the board, I'm looking at one of them, don't think out of the box here. Blow up the box, like the Bartman baseball. Just blow it up. Forget the ABMS templates. Do what's right. What adds value to our practitioners and our patients? It doesn't matter what it looks like. If you say it is right, it will be. Develop your coalition. All the surgical boards, plus anesthesia, they will follow you. You have a voting block at the American Board of Medical Specialties, and it will make a difference. Do what's right for neurosurgery. Others will follow. There will be new cries for new duty hour restrictions down the road, coming from these organizations or others. Doesn't matter. Same answer. Just say no. It violates every aspect of professionalism that I'm aware of. I'm very pleased with what's going on at the ACGME right now. We testified last month. Kim Birchall is co-chairing a task force, and I think out of that activity, with Tom Naska's leadership, we're going to end up winning back our PGY 1 year. It'll become a year of training and not a 5th year of medical school. We're going to get our chief year back as a year of transition to independent practice, where patient needs generate activities, not the clock. Training in neurosurgery is accomplished in a complex milieu. Duty hours are simply one element of that environment and probably unimportant. Let's return the focus to the patient's best interest. Allow professionalism, not regulation, to manage fatigue in surgical practice and training. In these ways, the forces of commoditization and deprofessionalism can be held at bay. Protect the shield. Part of our social contract requires that we prevent people who have character flaws from hurting the public. There are several cases in the public domain right now in which individuals got through. They've made it through the cracks. We can't let that happen. Is it the role of the board? No. The board sets educational standards. They examine and certify around those standards, and they have only a little bit of insight into the practices. Is it the RSC's role? No. The RSC looks at the overall environment of training to make sure that the board standards for education can be transmitted effectively. They don't look at individual residents. It's our training programs. Our program directors, our faculties, our chairs have 7 years with our young trainees. We have to make sure that folks with flaws do not make it through to potentially damage the public. I think our specialty can be very important in fixing the VA fiasco. I don't really know whether 300,000 of our veterans died awaiting care, as was reported 2 years ago. I don't know it because I don't believe the VA has competent systems to tell us what the number is, or integrity to tell us if in fact that was an accurate number. I do know, though, 2 years into that debacle and scandal, we still have 480,000 veterans waiting more than 30 days for service. All the while, administrative positions have gone up 160%, 142 million in new bonuses have been handed out, a health budget has exploded to $60 billion per year. Couldn't we provide reasonable care to 7 million veterans seeking care every year? I think the efforts at overhaul on Capitol Hill and even in the presidential discussions are a fool's errand. I hope we can influence legislation over time to incrementally, progressively defund the VA. Pass those savings through to charge cards that our veterans can take, guaranteeing their Medicare level coverage for care to be sought wherever they choose to do so. Congressman Phil Rowe from Tennessee, a physician, is very much of that mindset, and Katie and I have been working with him in the past couple of years to do just that. Please answer his calls if he requests you to participate. Maybe someday the VA will look like this: outpatient facilities focused on problems unique to our veterans like PTSD, prosthetics, burns. We've talked some about international outreach, and I can tell you in the past 2 years, I have seen the impact of the brand of the AANS on a global stage. We make a difference. At our board meeting this week, we had the president of each continental society of the World Federation, and we had the president and president-elect of the World Federation. In addition, we had one of our own, Dr. Walt Johnson, join us. Walt, a neurosurgeon from California, has been enormously empowered now in a unique position at the World Health Organization. This gives us an amazing opportunity. Think of the reach of the WHO. What if we joined forces in North America with our Continental Society, with FAANS, with others of like mind? Think of what we could do. A disruptive idea in a common problem, traumatic brain injury, hydrocephalus, that we could get the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation behind, Anne Lurie behind here in Chicago, and make a difference on the global stage. Fifth, we cannot take care of patients well if we're not well. Neurosurgery is hard, it's a hot seat. 3 deaths of young people in the prime of their career and life have hit close to home. I can assure you that our AANS leadership is focused on making us better patients. Get blood tests, get colonoscopies, get mammograms. Life's a marathon, go the distance. Through these straightforward and accomplishable strategies, the singular culture of neurosurgery and the deep values of our social contract will favorably impact medicine and our position in society. We must embrace our exceptionalism and never compromise our standards. In closing, I'm reminded of the words of my father. Son, in this great country of ours, you can accomplish anything you're willing to work hard enough for. Each of you in this room has accomplished Dad's American dream. The people in this room can change the world. Thank you for your devotion to learning. Thank you for caring for the sick. Thank you for your commitment to advancing healthcare through research. Thank you for your commitment to improving suffering around the world. Thank you for your commitment to the values embedded in our Hippocratic Oath. Regardless of what the future holds, we will prevail. We have control over our destiny. We stand as one. We stand for something. We stand for excellence. We will lead the way. Godspeed, and God bless our most noble profession. Thank you.